What's up, y'all? Cliff Williams here. I am joined today with the illustrious Tim Carpenter.
Hello, hello.
Excited about today's Not Gospel episode. Not sure when this one is going to air. Hopefully it comes out sooner than later. Been kind of busy this week, but we're going to dive right in. I want to first, before we get into anything like on the news, I want to ask Tim. So Tim is my brother-in-law. Tim is you're also a theater mate. Like you have a degree in theater, right?
Yeah, I do. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
Yeah, from right here in well, do you want people to know where you live in Berea, Kentucky?
I've been hiding that, but
Okay.
they know I'm a country
and now they
guy.
know.
Now
they
they
could probably
know.
hone it in. It's a small enough place.
You're not wrong.
Yeah, right here in ye old Berea college town.
Yep. So degree in theater, but
Yep.
somehow
Came real close to that degree in sociology.
it's really close. And so somehow the thing I want to talk about, because I think it's just like very interesting, especially with the degree in theater and stuff. Degree in theater winds up now you are like very much like significantly involved in armored combat league.
Oh yeah, yeah, of course.
And so I know the people.
Are your viewers familiar with
The
what?
22 people that are subscribed to my channel probably don't know what Armored Combat League
Oh,
is.
they've been living under a rock. Come on now.
So I just want to talk about that for a second. So Armored Combat League, go.
Armored Combat Go. Well, it's an extremely difficult concept to relay to the average person who is just completely drenched in safe and approachable activities.
Okay.
This is not necessarily that. It is a historical reenactment, not necessarily live action role play or LARP as it's sometimes called, but 14th century hathlitude, which is knights training for the battlefield in fashions that don't kill them. Because of course, if you kill your friends, then you got nobody to play with.
And you got more problems.
That's right. You got more problems. Oh man, the insurance costs would skyrocket.
And this is not like out in your city park with your pool noodles like some people are thinking. This is like legit.
We do practice in city parks.
Blacksmithing and stuff.
Oh yeah, you got to have a very thick gauge tempered steel to participate. Otherwise, you walk out looking like a inner city trash can.
Yeah, you have to. So you have to treat me and our listeners as if I don't. When you say Armored Combat League, I have no idea.
Well, let's give them a little bit of an image. So imagine that you're meeting some guys out in a park. You said you wanted to do steel fighting. Sure, let's give you a taste. So they're going to help you kit up. You're going to put on several layers of equipment. Equipment's pretty much the name of the game. You're going to put on these shoes that completely cover your foot. You're going to put on your greaves and your cuisses or your thighs. You're going to put on a brigandine, which is small plates that are riveted to this heavy wool fabric. That all goes over padding, like thick quilted padding, and that is intended to dissipate heavy blows. These guys are swinging at each other full force because you're trying to put down your opponents. It's a sport, and more often than not, people are
very
attracted.
much a full contact sport.
It's full contact as it gets, and you want to participate in the melees, otherwise known as the bohurts, in which you have 3 guys versus 3 guys, 5 guys versus 5 guys, all the way up to 150 versus 150. It's the largest one I've seen thus far.
That's amazing.
It's just a bunch of chaos, and you have marshals or referees that will stay in the list with you, and they will try to monitor and maintain the violence to an acceptable extent. I even hesitate to use violence because it is very much an athletic atmosphere, right? We're not trying to hurt each other, we're trying to win.
I mean, you are whacking each other with blunted weaponry, right?
Yeah,
but
it's all blunted. It's not sharp.
Yeah, but it has rules. It's and it has like guidelines and code and ethics that like I would assume illegal moves, let's say, and stuff, just like MMA or anything else.
Absolutely, yeah. There are some barred holds, so to speak. Like you can't hit people behind the knee, you can't hit them in the neck. No 12 to 6 shots along the spine, things of that nature. But for the most part, I think people are attracted to the environment because of the freedom that it offers. you are protected to a certain legitimate extent, just as much as you would be in, say, playing football, maybe even soccer. You're not going to sustain the same type of injuries a lot of times, but nonetheless, the technology works. It worked on the battlefield in the 15th century, and it still works today. In fact, better, because we have certain alloys and technologies that weren't afforded to them during the middle to late medieval period.
Awesome. And now you're part of a team, though, and you guys have like won tournaments and stuff. In this deal.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been participating since 2018, and I've been a part of many teams. Usually when you go to these larger tournaments, especially if you're a newer fighter, then you will merc for one of the larger teams that might not have a full bench to pull from. Actually, because you're wearing a Texas hat, I fought with the Warlords before. That's the Texas team. I think they might have been the Marshals at that point. But
nice.
When these teams grow to a certain size, they start to divide and create sects, which then can compete with one another in a proximal geographic area, which is kind of what we're trying to do in Nashville. And I'm located in Clarksville, so any of you listeners out in Clarksville, if you want to get involved, Tim Andrew is my Facebook page, and certainly
there you go.
Send us a message there or at the Nashville Armored Combat page for more information.
Listen, if you check out this video and you are in Nashville or near the Clarksville area, and you're interested in Armored Combat League, yes, we will use this video as a recruitment as well. I can vouch for the legitimacy. Tim knows his stuff, okay, and I have to share a story. I know for a fact that his armor works because they came up to visit. So you guys came up to visit us once around Halloween.
Oh yeah,
you wore he set up the whole deal. He's wearing his Armored Combat. He looked like the most kick butt knight. It made the best Halloween costume there was because it was legit.
Yeah.
And then you guys got into an accident on the way home.
Oh yeah, we did. We totaled a car. Yeah, we were driving my wife's car at the time, and
totaled the car. But what happened to the armor?
Oh, unscathed, unscathed. Yeah, I have my helmet was actually poking slightly out of the trunk of the totaled vehicle.
That's amazing.
We took an SUV at 45 to the rear end, and that Ukrainian-made helmet was sticking out there, just smiling at me.
So if you doubt the legitimacy and the craftsmanship of this armor, we can vouch.
That's right.
It can handle an accident.
It'll handle an accident. All right.
It's what you want to wear if you're in a high-speed chase.
Yeah. well. Maybe in your trunk.
Right, so, and in lieu of high-speed chases, I'm pulling out the journal today. We're going to talk about, because I haven't talked about it, the story out of, I guess, we say Queens is Long Island. Well, it's New York. Mm-hmm. And I have it here.
The general geographic area that is New York.
I haven't yet talked about this thing, and so I wanted to talk about it with you, but so the story of Jessica, and I want to say her name correctly. I think it's Bouvet. And I pulled information from the New York Post, Wall Street Journal, CNN.com. So just to get all my sources and all that out there. But Jessica Bouvet, or Bouvet, or I think it's Bouvet.
I like it when you add the S.
Bouvet. It's kind of like, I got my information at Home Depot.
Yeah. We're not native French speakers, so give us a break.
Yeah. From Long Island. She's 32 years old, and she's being charged right now with vehicular manslaughter, aggravated manslaughter, and manslaughter in the secondary manslaughter. And it's like 13 or 15 different charges, and some of them is driving on a suspended license, leaving the scene of an accident, and a DUI. And she's possibly, according to New York Post, she could face up to 15 years in prison on these 13 different counts. And what happened is she allegedly hit, according to the footage and according to the testimony of the other officers there, she allegedly hit Anastasios Sakos, and I probably butchered his name. I'm very sorry, but again, it's I am a country bumpkin. All right, so let's just put it that way.
Disclaimers aside.
Yeah, disclaimers aside.
We're trying our best.
But he was from the NYPD. He was a 14-year veteran of the NYPD. He was 43 years old. He's married and had a 6-year-old son and a 3-year-old daughter. Hit him with the car, and according to officers, he flipped, it was pretty fast. He flipped into a field, is what they were saying, and their testimony may or may not be 100% accurate. Obviously, they're going to jump to the defense of their brother of the force, but I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt here and say that he got flipped over, and it was pretty graphic. Apparently, she fled the scene with a shattered windshield, ramming another police vehicle in the process.
So they were chasing her down.
Well, what happened was it was an accident. There was already another accident. They were working another accident at the time. That's why it was kind of blocked up. And she came through driving under the influence. Apparently, she admitted to having being under the influence of marijuana and alcohol. Yeah. Prior to that, she's a podcaster. Prior to that, she was on her podcast on video taking shots, and so clearly she breathed over the limit, like she was inebriated.
What, she likes to podcast drunk?
Apparently. Well, we'll get to the podcast thing is why I think this story is so interesting, because
it's kind of a skill.
At the because I would not trust myself to be doing that.
It's a little hard to do.
So her immediate when I've watched the footage of her in the handcuffs getting put in the car, and the journalist is asking her, like, what do you have to say? And she immediately was saying, I'm in tears. She's crying. It sounds sincere. I'm sorry. And they asked her why. She said, I'm sorry that I hit him and that he's dead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I'm sorry.
Do we know how old she is?
32. Okay. What makes this interesting and why this is interesting is because this is in stark contrast to what she was saying about the police force and police officers just minutes prior on her podcast. The comments she made earlier were, we're not scared of a police. We don't give an F about you, referring to the police. We don't give an F about you, your mama, your children, your wife. You're nothing. You're nothing to us. Bug spray, roaches, infestation, F the police.
How about that? Yeah. Okay, so that's why we're looking at this story, because this is police as victims in, under the pretense of oppression, like people who don't respect the fact that police are there to aid them. And
I feel like I feel like it's part of a bigger story, perhaps, and that's why I say it's worth attention. Since 2015, this is from CNN.com, and it's about accountability, and it's about holding people accountable, even if we can or we can't. Okay. Because in 2015, at a BLM protest march in Minnesota, an independent group of protesters. Now, the BLM says they had no affiliation with these people.
Well, BLM is a huge
organization. Much bigger now than it was in 2015. It had many, many events, obviously.
Yeah. George Floyd, obviously, kind of...
Absolutely. Kind of...
made that movement explode.
Yeah. But the chant in 2015 at this, that they has been used multiple times in right-leaning media. Even Kayleigh McEnany has used it, and Trump used it. Pigs in a blanket, fry 'em like bacon was the chant that these protesters were doing, talking about police officers.
Oh, the independent protesters.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But according to CNN.com, they cannot say for certain that the phrase has not been used by anyone over the course, because like we said, the BLM is a huge movement. They cannot say for certain that phrase has not been used by people affiliated with the BLM. But in that particular instance in 2015, BLM says that was an independent group saying that.
Okay, trying to distance themselves at least politically.
Right. Yeah. So the question I have is in terms of accountability, that it seems like, I think it has, if you're going to hold people accountable, I feel like you cannot lean one way or the other. It has to be, what's good for me is good for you. What's good for the goose is good for the gander, as the saying goes. So for me, 6 years of increased tension between police and obviously protest organizations like BLM, the movements that are saying defund or abolish police, this kind of stuff. You have 6 years of this increased tension. And then you have something like this, where a woman who expresses immediate guilt and immediate remorse for the action at the scene when they're leading her away. She's like, I'm sorry, he's dead, and all this kind of stuff. But prior to that, demonstrates a malicious intent, at least a malicious resentment towards police. And in terms of accountability, how do we not see this and be like, okay, where do we start holding organizations and influencers accountable for these kinds of actions? Like, and you and I talked about this a little bit, like Maxine Waters, who was in front of an angry mob here recently around the Chauvin trial, who was saying we need to get more confrontational. We need to show them we mean business. When you've had at least a year now of 5%, and I'll go with the 5% of these protests have been violent, 95% peaceful. And that's the stats. I'll stay with the stats. Bear in mind, that's the media narrative likes to focus on the 95% as being peaceful, and BLM and their organizations are very, very, very peaceful.
But in lieu of like the rioters?
In lieu of the 5% that are rioting and burning down buildings. And there's a story where they were trying to keep in West Virginia or Richmond, Virginia, where they were trying to keep firefighters from getting to a burning building. There were people in the building. Firefighters were finally able to get the people out. And granted, that's only 5% of the overall mostly peaceful stuff. Yeah. But then the media narrative also is focusing on the less than 1% of police interactions that result in brutality. If you look at police interactions with like anyone of any color, or police interactions with civilians, the overwhelming majority, 99.99 whatever percent, are without police brutality. They're within the confines of the law, and they go about their duty like they're supposed to.
They are within the confines of the law. Yeah. I think that's maybe the point, if you don't mind
sure.
What did you have to do with any of those laws? How are they representing you as a person?
Well, the hope is that we can vote on them, and that's and that our votes matter. I don't know that our vote matters a great deal. I've never voted on
policy like that, and I don't think that either of us have in our lifetime.
Yeah.
And I sincerely doubt that if you review the course of American history, that any of us, as part of our class, have been able to influence the outcome of any of those laws. Therefore, police don't necessarily represent us. Of course, they have to act in such a way that the average person is going to maintain complacency. But even if there is only 1% of police interactions that end in brutality, it's still reminiscent of an institutional problem that is blatantly revealing itself, and perhaps only so in our lifetime because of the advent of technology, the ability to be able to record and thus distribute the brutality that is obviously evident in that type of institution.
I love the phrase I saw, "Lives matter." If you need a color in front of this, you're a racist, is what I saw. It's like a little meme going around. I think it's awesome. It's like all lives matter.
I think people typically misunderstand the Black Lives Matter. It's not exclusive. It's pointing out something that may not have been apparently evident in a dramatic fashion, right?
Sure.
Black Lives Matter doesn't necessarily mean that all lives that are not black do not matter or don't matter as much as Black Lives Matter. It's just it's the thing that's being presented with that particular closet idea. Like it's a framework, right?
Well, I think a lot of the interesting thing that I think is a lot of people who are making the memes and saying like lives matter are the people who are like, we never forgot that you mattered. Like even if it's like Black lives have been neglected, we're trying to remind you they matter as much as everybody else. The people who are making those memes, a lot of them are people who feel like me. It's like, we never forgot that you matter just as much as me. Like, then those are the ones who are like, I don't need the reminder that you matter. I know you matter because you're alive.
Well, there's a paratext with that, right? Like Black Lives Matter isn't necessarily even saying that those lives matter per se, but
it's great marketing for the movement.
I think BLM was basically like a packaged list of ideologies, right? That included things like police brutality specifically against peoples of color, or institutionalized racism, which of course is a very broad, blanketed kind of idea that could be discussed ad nauseum, and of course it's
definitely debatable for sure. Like, and it's got points on all ends of the spectrum for sure. And the debate is ongoing. People still probably right now debating about
it's past a lot of people's field of study. Maybe it's more than what interests them, and maybe it's something that goes against their worldview, which makes it a really difficult thing to bring up, especially in casual conversation. You're not going to have coffee with somebody and be like, "Oh, so yeah, institutionalized racism, right? Like, what's your opinion on it?" And let's touch on that for a quick second. It's nigh impossible to do.
Yeah,
it's a very deep rabbit hole.
Yeah, to assume that two white dudes on a couch in behind a desk.
Yeah.
To assume that we can't fix that today.
Oh well, to fix it, simply being on a podcast, that would that would be disingenuous. Like, obviously can't do that.
To make that assumption that we can't do that.
But
it doesn't mean we can't talk about it, and doesn't mean our ideas can't shift. A big question that I have, and I'd love to get your perspective on this, is the thing that I've been thinking about a while, the thing that I wrestle with, just being honest, is how much responsibility do organizations and political leaders who make inflammatory comments, who encourage the divide. I say they kind of encourage the divide between police and minorities.
Yeah. In opposition to
how much I feel like how much responsibility do they bear when actions like this are taken? And the reason I ask that is because if you think about January 6th, Trump was held accountable for telling people to fight like hell and
stay strong
and
march on the
Capitol. He did say he's peacefully, patriotically, but he was held accountable for his words in that speech. Yep. And until the trial, which I watched it unfold on both the prosecution and the defense, the reasons, unfortunately for them, the language that they wanted to hold him accountable for was unfortunately used on by the Democrats over and over and over. Their defense showed countless video of Kamala Harris, Maxine Waters, and all these various people saying, "We're going to fight like hell. We're going to fight like hell. We're going to fight." It's like, and then the evidence came out saying that of how a lot of the violent stuff, like the bomb threats and all the stuff that happened at the Capitol, were planned months in advance before Trump's speech. And then there was the fact that he was no longer in office. How can you impeach somebody? And then there was the threat of retaliation when the defense said, if you impeach somebody who's no longer sitting, then these rules will begin to apply for anyone. So then you can go down the road and say, well, we're going to impeach this person who said this and this, this and this. We're going to move for impeachment on Maxine Waters and whoever else, these people from their offices, because they said exactly the same phrases, and violence has been occurring and tensions have been rising. So I guess he was at least tried. And what would have happened if he'd have been convicted twice? Yeah, what would have happened in this last one had he been convicted? Had the evidence been substantial enough? And like I said, both sides tried really hard, as they would in any high-profile trial. Both sides tried really hard.
A lot of resources went into
what
that.
would have happened, the result of him being held accountable to a point, if he was convicted, would be him no longer being able to run for a public office, period.
Oh, no.
Yeah, in the same fashion as someone, in my opinion, someone like Maxine Waters, who's clearly encouraging when she's standing in front of an angry mob saying, get more confrontational. And we have seen at least 5% of the peaceful protests leading to loss of life, burning down buildings and all this kind of stuff, and then you see a thing like this where somebody who's obviously angry at police, she has animosity towards police, and according to some of the police testimonies, when she was trying to flee the scene, she was stopped, reversed her car towards police officers. They had to jump out of the way of the car, according to their testimony.
Yeah.
When this kind of animosity is being kind of instilled, and how much responsibility should we put on organizations and organizational leaders who are at least debatably encouraging this type of behavior, especially if we attempted to hold somebody like Trump accountable for what happened January 6th. How much responsibility do we attach to these organizations and these political leaders who are possibly encouraging this type of tragic result? Because this is a tragic situation. Loss of life, police officer died. It's a tragic situation.
So to start off, we were discussing the advent of the division enabler, right?
Yeah.
So someone who is encouraging dissent and potentially violence against what is perceived to be the opposition.
Yeah.
To just speak on that for a quick second, I don't think that Democrats and Republicans, or as we like to call them, sometimes alternatively, liberals and conservatives, are that much different at all. In terms of the political spectrum, they are effectively the same political party with slightly different views, but they still support free market economic theory, and they still are going to approach the subject from a very authoritarian basis because, of course, that's what keeps them in power. We in the United States seem to be obsessed with great man theory. This idea that there are singular leaders and superheroes that will either come to our aid to rescue us or usher in some new revolutionary age of benevolence and awesomeness. But what it comes down to is that every single person, you, me, the communities that we're a part of, that's what ultimately makes change happen. And I think that that's what is, not receiving nearly as much coverage over.
I heard a recent, it was a journalist, I think it was, saying that one of the problems we have right now is used to, in journalism, people would try to pursue the facts to formulate their opinion. And now the problem with the instant access to information, one of the problems they're seeing is that people formulate their opinion about something and then pursue the facts. And once you've already formulated your opinion, the facts you pursue are not only going to be interpreted differently by you, but then they're also, you're pursuing certain facts.
Yeah,
things that
bias.
Confirmation bias. And that's what they're saying is that, like, that's the big shift we've seen in journalism and everything, is that now it's like, we've already got our opinion on this, let's find the facts. And it's like, that's a little backwards,
Right.
or at least I think it is, a little backwards.
But you were talking about accountability. So let's say
that's a segue, I'm sorry.
We're seeking justice, right? Like we want people to get what they deserve. Whether
when something
it's,
bad
whether
happens,
it's good or
we
bad.
want somebody to pay the price. It's just
Exactly.
in our heads.
I can understand why that would be an innate part of who we are as human beings. We always want to make sure that people are treated fairly, whether it's punishment because they did something wrong or reward because they did something right. And yet, we don't necessarily live in a just world, so it's very difficult to formulate a perfect algorithm for a highly developed institution of justice, especially when it comes to leaders and what kind of influence they have over their constituents.
Yeah.
The Trump administration or Maxine Waters or any of the other rabble rousers, not necessarily saying rabble rousing is a bad thing. There have definitely been some good rabble rousers throughout the course of history. But we have no way of keeping our politicians and our political leaders accountable, other than the supposition that we're able to vote them out in the next election cycle.
Yeah. What was it that Bill Maher said? He's Joe Biden is such a disappointment to comedians because there's nothing to joke about with him.
Oh yeah, there's nothing to subvert. He's one big joke. He's one big joke.
Don't get me banned. Don't get me banned.
You're not gonna get banned over that. But see, I say that like Joe Biden's one big joke because you also have to look at the American institution of government as such as well.
There's no and here's the deal. I just did a Joe Biden. Look, here's the deal.
Okay,
there's
be real. Let's be
there's
real.
no bigger product. If he is a joke, there's no bigger product of our governmental system than Joe Biden. He's been in it 48 years now.
Yeah, he's an institutional politician, if there ever was one.
So that speaks volumes about the governmental system we have in place. Although it's lasted this long, it's like you're saying, that's a guy. If we find anything laughable about him, we should begin to get a little concerned about what our governmental system is producing.
I think greater accountability for every person is good. What we do in order to functionally respond to that accountability is, I think, where it gets dicey.
Yeah.
Does that mean that we should flay them in the street? No, because that's barbaric, right?
Besides, we forgot that skill anyways. I'm just kidding. Oh, dude.
Maybe some of us did.
You're like, not an armored
What
combat
are you
league.
doing? Yeah. I'm bringing back the old trades. That's awesome. Wagon wheels and flaying. Dude.
Tim, dude, thank you so much for being in.
Thank you.
Check out Armored Combat League. I'm telling you,
Please.
check this stuff out. I've seen some of it. It is rad as all get out, and it is way above my physicality. I don't let these 22-inch pythons deceive you. I am weak. But thank you guys so much. Do the liking, commenting, all that jazz. Or don't like it if you don't like it. And keep being awesome, because that's all you made you.